were rowing in the boat race earlier on this year. I know some of their boat race athletes have broken into smaller boats here at this regatta. I'm sure if Tom was here, he'd be able to know all the names and be able to give us chapter and verse. But
well, he would. I mean, this was one of the majorly oversubscribed events. 32 entries have had to face a time trial to get down to the top 16. So these crews already will have had 2 races on Friday, 1 race yesterday. And this is the first of 2 races today. And already it is the Oxford University Women's Boat Club who've taken a lead over the Oxford Brookes University. And I'm not surprised. I was fortunate enough to be on the back of a launch commentating on this first race with this Oxford University Women's Boat Club crew. And flipping heck, they impressed. They absolutely powered off in their first race. But Oxford Brookes are holding them at the moment.
Oxford Brookes are at 36. Oxford University and the bottom of the screen are at 37s. We're halfway down the Temple Island Meadow and Oxford University have just a canvas.
So I think this might be a bit of a race of not quite youth and experience, but this OUWBC boat, it's not a blue boat, it's not made up of blues. This is a development crew. It's part of their emerging talent programme. They've only been together 2 weeks. It's their first regatta together. They've certainly, if you see, and I noticed actually they look tidier even than they did just 3 days ago. I saw them on Friday, and although they were hugely powerful and stonking the boat along, they were rocking a bit. But even in 3 days, they've come together better, I'd say.
They're at 34.5 off for Brookes at 33. I noticed that the Oxford University boat has got an unusual rig. It's not conventionally rigged. It's stroked on both bow side, and it's got 4 and 5 together on stroke side. Inexperienced oarsmen, close coupling, crew together only a fortnight. Is that a sensible thing?
What a race! I mean, we're in here for the semi-final. Both these crews will have to race again later. This is for a position in the final here. And I think what would be really interesting in the second half of the race, as you say, we've got the Oxford University, so in the blue on the far side of your picture now. They're slightly overrating. Oxford Brookes, perhaps they've been together longer. They were actually, I believe they were second to Newcastle at the Bucks Regatta, so they've been together longer. They're slightly underrating, so maybe they've got a little bit more in the tank and they'll be able to squeeze out a little bit more, but it's neck and neck. There's only a foot in it here. I think Brookes coming through level, coming past the commentary position, dead level, I'd say. Dead level.
Brookes
coming
at
the last
36 and Oxford at 35, so nothing in it rate-wise.
But now Oxford Brookes have lifted their rate, and I wonder what will happen now if they're just able to squeeze that extra pip. It's brought them up level.
Up to 37s now, Oxford Brookes.
And this, of course, what 8s are able to do is just keep increasing their rate, use the power of all 8 women in the boat. It's a shame we've lost the end of that race. I shall certainly be going to check out the results. Because we're now back up at the start.
It would be good if we could go back to that race between Brookes and Oxford, and then we'll pick up the second semi-final afterwards. I don't know.
That was neck and neck,
I'd really like to see the closing part of that race if I could, but there we go. We're now back at the start on the second semi-final, which is the Bucks champions Newcastle University against Nottingham. Nottingham in the yellow. On the left of the screen, and Newcastle to the right of the screen. Newcastle unsurprisingly beat their opponents Durham in the Northern Boat Races about 3 or 4 weeks ago, which were re-established last year, and rode through the centre of Newcastle, finishing just opposite the Sage Centre. An annual now spectacle in the centre of there, but Newcastle establishing that class. They were the Bucks winners. They've already got 3/4 of a length over Newcastle.
Okay, so we would expect Newcastle University to have the form in this race, and they've looked really impressive all week. Again, I've had the pleasure of being able to sit on the back of the launch, commentating and looking at them really closely, and they've had a pretty comfortable progression through the competition so far. These crews have had to work very hard to get even to this stage. They've had to have a time. I think actually perhaps Newcastle was reseeded, so they would have missed out on having to do the time trial down to the top 16, but then they've had the heat, the quarterfinals yesterday, the first of 2 races today. Newcastle, just as I said, it's been fantastic watching their progression. Of course, you know that the north of England used to have the 2 centres of rowing in England, the Thames and the Tideway, and the Tyne. Used to be all the professional scullers up there, a lot of the boat builders, a lot of the innovations that we see in boats, including outriggers, designed by the crafty boatsmen up in the Tyne. And for a while it was a major, major centre of the development of rowing. And then we kind of fell away a bit, and now the kind of proud progression of rowing in Newcastle and up in the Tyne is really showing through again.
It's extraordinary and lovely to see. Both Newcastle University and Durham University are based at Newburn, just outside Newcastle, on the River Tyne, and the brand new boathouse for Tyne Rowing Club was actually opened last weekend, and that is a fantastic facility. But Nottingham are not actually letting Newcastle have it all their own way.
Newcastle actually had settled back down to about 33 for a while, but it was coming to the last 1,000 now. They've had to lift again. They're 34, 35. They've responded to a big challenge and a big push by Nottingham. I mean, you'd expect it. These are both very seasoned crews. No one's got an easy ride through to this stage of the competition. But Newcastle have just broken clear. They've still got that all-important 2 feet of clear water over the Nottingham crew. But this is going to be a much more decided race, I feel, than the previous one we were seeing, which was going to be neck and neck down to the line. It does look like Newcastle. We would expect them to, and they have got the measure of this other crew. What do you think?
Nottingham are at 37s and Newcastle still just at 34.5. So I think Newcastle can just sneak a little look out of the corner of their eyes and know that they've got another gear if they need it, but they're not going to use that other gear because this afternoon they've got a steep hill to climb with Oxford Brooks. Interesting.
We don't know who. We had the results of that.
No, we haven't had the result.
Apparently, there's no camera past 5. This is why we're not seeing the end. So you have to go to the website to look at those results. And but I suspect it will be Newcastle who will be having to race more than they would like, I think, in these closing stages of this race.
That certainly doesn't look like cruising to me.
No.
That looks like a crew that's saying we've got to give it some stick. Well, now,